If you're trying to lose weight the way most people are told to, eat less, walk more, I need to show you a number that might change how you think about that plan entirely. In an 18-month study of adults in their 60s, researchers compared people who dieted alone, people who dieted plus walked, and people who dieted plus did resistance training. The group that added walking, the exercise almost everyone assumes is the safe, gentle choice, lost the highest percentage of muscle of all three groups, not the group that did nothing extra. The group that walked, that's the mistake I want to walk you through today. Not eating too little, and not eating too much. Losing weight in a way that quietly takes far more muscle than it needs to, while the scale tells you everything is going great. Stay with me on this one because the number I just gave you isn't the surprising part. The surprising part is why it happens, and how many people doing everything right now are walking straight into it without knowing. The study that should change how you diet. Let's look at the actual numbers because they're more specific and more useful than a general warning. Researchers at Wake Forest University followed 249 adults in their 60s with obesity for 18 months. Everyone followed the same calorie-reduced diet. One group did nothing else. One group added walking. One group added resistance training with weight machines 3 times a week. 3 groups, same starting point, same calorie deficit. The only thing that changed was what they did with their bodies alongside the diet. That's what makes this study so useful. It isolates the one variable most weight loss advice never talks about. Here's what happened to the muscle specifically. In the diet plus walking group, 20% of the total weight lost was muscle. In the diet alone group, it was 16%. In the diet plus resistance training group, it dropped to 10%, roughly half of what the walking group lost proportionally. Sit with that for a second. The people who added exercise, who did more than the do nothing extra group, ended up losing more muscle than the people who changed nothing about their activity at all. That's not what most of us would predict. Walking is supposed to be the healthy addition, and in a lot of ways it still is. But specifically for muscle, in this study it made things worse, not better. And this wasn't a trade-off where the resistance training group lost less fat to protect their muscle. Fat loss was actually similar or greater in both the walking and resistance training groups compared to diet alone, around 16 to 17 pounds of fat lost versus about 10 pounds with diet alone. The resistance training group got essentially the best of both outcomes. Strong fat loss with muscle loss cut roughly in half. So this isn't a story about one group sacrificing fat loss for muscle preservation. The resistance training group didn't trade one for the other. They kept the fat loss and protected the muscle at the same time. That combination is exactly what most people assume they're already getting when they diet and stay active. And this study is a pretty direct signal that walking alone doesn't deliver it. The researchers also tracked what these two types of loss actually did to function. And this is the part I want you to really hold on to. Losing fat was linked to walking faster. Losing muscle was linked to weaker knees. 2 numbers on a scale can look identical, same total pounds lost, while one person walks better afterward and another person's knees get measurably weaker. The scale can't tell you which one happened. Only your body composition can. Think about what that actually means in daily life. Faster walking speed and stronger knees aren't abstract lab metrics. They're the difference between climbing stairs without thinking about it and dreading them, between getting up off the floor easily and needing to brace against furniture. The number on the scale doesn't capture any of that. It just goes down either way. Why this happens, here's the mechanism behind why this isn't random, and why walking specifically didn't protect muscle the way you might expect. Intentional weight loss in older adults is well documented as a real risk factor for accelerated muscle loss, independent of how the weight loss is achieved. When you're in a calorie deficit, your body is looking for energy wherever it can find it, and without a strong enough signal telling it otherwise, some of that energy comes from breaking down muscle tissue, not just fat. Your body doesn't automatically know which tissue is expendable. In a deficit, it's balancing survival priorities, not aesthetics or long-term function. Muscle is metabolically expensive to maintain, so unless something is actively telling your body this tissue is being used, keep it. It becomes a candidate to be broken down for fuel right alongside fat. Resistance training provides that signal. It tells your body, specifically and directly, that this muscle is being used and needs to be kept, which is a fundamentally different message than aerobic activity like walking sends. Walking is genuinely valuable for your heart, your endurance, your mood, but on its own, during a calorie deficit, it doesn't give your muscles the same keep me signal that lifting or pushing against real resistance does. That's a large part of why the walking group in that study didn't get the muscle protection the resistance training group did, even though both groups were exercising regularly. It's worth being precise about this, because it's easy to hear walking doesn't help and assume walking is bad. It isn't. Walking is doing real important work for your cardiovascular system and your mood the entire time. It's just not doing the specific job of telling your muscles to stick around during a deficit. Those are two different jobs. And one exercise doing the first job well doesn't mean it's doing the second job at all. Protein plays the other half of this role. In a separate controlled trial, older adults who combined a higher protein diet, about 1.3 grams per kilogram of body weight, with resistance exercise preserved significantly more muscle than those eating a standard 0.8 gram diet without exercise. And a systematic review pooling 24 studies found something worth remembering. Older adults on higher protein diets during weight loss didn't just lose less muscle, they retained more lean mass and lost more fat than those on standard protein intakes. Adequate protein during a diet doesn't just protect what you have, it appears to improve the actual ratio of what you lose. So the two levers that actually move this number are working in tandem. Resistance training gives your body a reason to keep the muscle, and protein gives your body the raw material to keep it with. Neither one alone tells the whole story, but together they explain almost the entire gap between that 20% muscle loss in the walking group and the 10% in the resistance training group. The name for what happens if this keeps happening. Here's the part that explains why this quiet mistake deserves that word specifically. If weight is lost this way repeatedly, or over a long period, without protecting muscle, it can lead to a real, clinically named condition called sarcopenic obesity, the coexistence of excess body fat and low muscle mass or function at the same time. It's estimated to affect somewhere between 10 and 20% of older adults, and it's strongly associated with frailty, cardiometabolic problems, physical disability, and mortality, often more strongly than either low muscle mass or excess fat on their own. That last part deserves repeating, because it's counterintuitive. Having both low muscle and high fat at once appears to be worse for long-term health outcomes than having just one of those two problems by itself. It's not simply fat problem plus muscle problem added together. The combination behaves like its own distinct risk category. This is the outcome that makes the mistake genuinely quiet. You can watch the number on the scale go down, feel like the plan is working, and still be moving toward a body composition that's functionally worse than where you started, more fragile, weaker, at higher risk of falls and loss of independence. Because what mattered wasn't just how much weight came off, but what kind of tissue it came from. And because it's quiet, there's usually no dramatic moment where you realize it's happening. There's no single day where it becomes obvious. It shows up gradually, a jar lid that's harder to open than it used to be, stairs that feel steeper, a walk that used to feel easy now requiring a bit more effort. By the time it's noticeable day to day, the underlying shift has usually been building for a while. The repeat offense, weight cycling, if this pattern happens once, it's a missed opportunity to do better. If it happens repeatedly, losing weight, regaining it, losing it again, the research suggests it compounds into something worse. This pattern, called weight cycling, has been specifically linked to increased risk of sarcopenia and frailty in older adults, with the effect becoming more pronounced in people who've been through multiple cycles. The reason is specific and worth understanding. When weight comes back after a diet, it tends to come back disproportionately as fat, without the muscle fully returning alongside it. So each cycle can leave you at the same weight as before, or even lighter, but with a worse muscle-to-fat ratio than you started with, quietly ratcheting in the wrong direction with every attempt, even when each individual attempt felt successful in the moment. This is why I've lost the same 20 pounds 5 times is a more serious sentence than it sounds like on the surface. Each one of those 5 losses may have looked identical on a scale, but if muscle wasn't specifically protected each time, and fat came back faster than muscle did each time regain happened, the person at the end of that 5th cycle is in a meaningfully different, and generally worse, position than the person who started it, even at the same body weight. The crunk version of this mistake, I want to mention something directly relevant right now, given how common it's become. The newer generation of weight loss medications, the GLP-1 class of drugs many people are using today, genuinely work, often producing substantial weight loss. But current geriatric research is actively raising the same concern with these medications specifically. A meaningful portion of the weight loss can be fat-free mass, including muscle, and discontinuation rates are high enough, roughly 2/3 of users stopping within a year in some data, that the weight cycling pattern we just covered becomes a real, live concern for people using and stopping these medications. Put those two facts side by side and the concern becomes obvious. A drug that can produce meaningful muscle loss during use, combined with a high chance of stopping and regaining, is essentially a fast-forward button on the exact weight cycling pattern that's already linked to accelerated frailty in older adults. That's not a reason to panic, it's a reason to be deliberate. I'm not telling you to avoid these medications. That's a decision between you and your doctor, and they offer real, legitimate benefits for a lot of people. What I am telling you is that if you're using one or considering it, everything covered in this video applies to you directly, and probably more urgently. The protein and resistance training piece isn't optional add-on advice in that context. It's the specific thing current research says addresses the exact risk these medications carry. That's worth raising directly with whoever is prescribing it. What actually protects your muscle while you diet? So here's what the evidence actually points to concretely. If you're intentionally losing weight at any age past 60, prioritize protein specifically during the diet, not just in general. The research on preserving muscle during weight loss points to intakes on the higher end of what we've covered before, often 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilogram rather than settling for the minimum, and make resistance training, not walking alone, not cardio alone, part of the plan because it's specifically the signal that changes which tissue your body chooses to let go of. None of this requires an extreme overhaul. It requires two specific, deliberate additions layered on top of whatever diet approach you're already using. Enough protein, distributed through the day, and enough resistance work, done consistently, to give your body a reason to hold on to the muscle it has. Walking is still worth doing. It's just not by itself the muscle protective piece of this puzzle that a lot of people quietly assume it is. The mistake here was never eating too much or too little in some obvious way. It's trusting a number on a scale to tell you something it was never built to measure. Two people can lose the exact same amount of weight and end up in completely different places. One walking faster, one with weaker knees, and the only thing standing between those two outcomes is whether muscle was specifically protected along the way. The scale will never tell you which of those two people you're becoming. It just keeps counting down, giving the same quiet reassurance either way. What actually determines the outcome is happening somewhere the scale can't see, in whether the tissue coming off is fat or muscle, and that's decided by what you do alongside the deficit, not by the deficit itself. If this is connected with you, the video on protein after 60 covers exactly how much and when to eat it, and the strength training video covers the exercise side of this same equation in full.